some members of the American public a sense that the government knew what it was doing, but it didn't know what it was doing. And it gave people maybe a sense of security. Okay. And I talk about in the book that it was, in fact, this extremely high rate of false positives. In other words, the fact that none of these people arrested and none of these people tried actually were terrorists, that's what scared him. Right? Because people knew that the government wasn't catching anybody. But they were making, there's these big stories, remember James Yee, Guantanamo, Muslim minister, spy, terrorism. You know, the poor guy's career was destroyed, and they never found him guilty of anything. Okay, another part of the book I talk about. When people talked about harassment and hate crimes, I found really interesting geographic patterns. Like I found 3 different patterns, but I chose to focus on a comparison of the southwest side of the city and the southwest suburbs because it was really striking, the difference between the Arab and Muslim American experience on the southwest side and in the southwest suburbs. And to just be brief here, both places had an immediate spike of kind of assaults and harassment after September 11th. But on the southwest side, it really slowed down very quickly. And I looked at the police data on this, whatever e-crime data. But in the southwest suburbs, as many of you know, it went on and on and on for years, right? It didn't just stay for a week or 2 or 6 months. Like in most places, the backlash was over. The big backlash was over in 3 to 4 months. Not in the southwest suburbs. Went on for years. So I said, well, this is really interesting. How do you explain that? Why did that happen? Why in one place it's like this and in another place it's like that? You know about the siege on the Bridge of Mosque, I assume. That is quite well documented in the book. You can read it and experience it all over again. And I think for matters of time, I'm not going to read to you what I was going to read about this comparison, but let me see where my summary is. I argue that it was the pre-existing character of local level social relationships that create this difference. That the southwest suburbs, there was kind of a social apartheid going on. You know, there were the Arabs and the Muslims, and there were the whites. By and large. There's always people who are, who don't follow this pattern, but this is a general pattern. The southwest side, you have Arabs, Muslims, African Americans, Latinos, and whites kind of living in this mixed neighborhood that has a lot of challenges in it. I mean, there's no doubt that the southwest side has a lot of challenges. But that people on the southwest side have been working together for years. They know each other, right? The organizations, they do things together. They're not strangers to each other. In the southwest suburbs, this kind of social apartheid meant that the 2 groups really did not know each other. And when you don't know people, it's easier to villainize them, to criminalize them, right? And I think that the people who marched on the Bridge of Mosque, the mob of 300, I think that they thought they had tacit approval that that would be permitted, that that was going to be okay, because they were expressing the sentiments of a lot of people in the area. And I also talk about, the growing, so I have to, it's a scholarly book, I have to tie it into theories about, the fact that this is what happens when a group that's a non-white group starts becoming a demographic population, a significant demographic population in the area, right? It happens to African Americans, it happens to Latinos. Your community starts growing and you start being seen as you're going to take over the neighborhood, right? So I'd say that these hate crimes, this stuff that happened in the southwest suburbs, in my view, was not about September 11th. That just was what let it explode. It was about, what I call a threat to the moral order of the neighborhood and a threat to the perceived threat that Arab and Muslim Americans were posing to the cultural hegemony of the area, let's say. This is a threat that did not exist on the Southwest side. So it's kind of a, well, I hope you enjoy it. It's an interesting argument that I believe in. So, you know, there's different types of hate crimes, and there's this book I quoted here by Levin and McDevitt. But there's a type of hate crime called neighborhood defenders, people who believe it's their crusade to save the neighborhood, right? And that's what so they say in defense of hate crimes, hate mongers seize on what they consider a triggering event to serve the catalyst of the expression of their anger. Perpetrators of this type do not leave their own neighborhoods to look for victims. And what's interesting about this, this demographic and cultural explanation I have is that it really explains something that has troubled many, even social scientists. How come in Dearborn, Michigan, there were so few hate crimes? People assumed that in a city, the most densely concentrated Arab American population would be the place with the most hate crimes. But the theories that I'm using in the book say the exact opposite. They say that when a population reaches a certain level, people who don't want to live with them leave. And people who are willing to try to, you know, work and make a new life together stay. And so you expect a lower level of hate crimes where a group is, they're 50% of the population, right? You would expect a low level of hate crimes there, not a high level. And then I think I just want to get to the gender story, because I also found in my study that women reported experiencing, you know, whether it's assaults or harassment or verbal abuse or being spit at or sneezed at. You know, amazing stories. They sneezed in my face at the mall. I mean, you can't count that as a crime, but that's pretty disgusting. People are like going up to you and sneezing in your face, right? Anyhow, I discovered that women reported, in my study, women reported more than double the rate of these experiences than men. So if the fear is of terrorists, and terrorists are associated with men, why are they attacking women? Now, the common story, the story everybody will tell you, is that, and 90% of these cases with women, and more than 50% with them, 30%, whatever, with men, a woman in hijab was present, right? Because I do these interviews, I can read the story, like where they were, who was there. So it's like, so the common story is that women in hijab are attacked because they're visibly Muslim. Well, you know, most of these things happen in the south of the suburbs. There's plenty of Muslims here to attack. There's men all over the place, and everybody knows an Arab or a Muslim man out here, right? I think so. I mean, they make mistakes now and then, but I think the populations are visible. There's businesses to attack. Those are pretty evident. So why are people attacking women? So I have this really fun discussion about the hijab. You know, I believe the hijab, women in hijab were attacked because they symbolically represent a cultural threat. Cultural threat, not violence, not terrorism. You know, what does the hijab symbolize? Well, what have people been told about the hijab, right? Women are forced to do it by men, right? So you've got force, whereas American culture is supposed to be about choice. It's about patriarchy, whereas American culture is supposed to not be about patriarchy. So I have, you know, I have this kind of long argument. I have stories. You can read it about why that I believe justify my argument that women were attacked as a cultural threat, because they have been propped up and positioned in this culture to represent these values that are un-American, right? And then I also have some stuff in there about flags, because a lot of times there's these flag things going on, right? People attacking women are throwing flags in their faces, or they got flags on their cars, or they're putting flags on their lawn, or, you know, so it is a statement that, hey, you can't be American and wear a hijab. Right? That's the statement of the flag. And then I have all these stories about women who went and bought flags because they wanted to make the statement, I'm American. And I'm just American. It's just this whole kind of flag dance going on. These performances, these statements that are being made around hijab and flag. So I call this the modesty unity nexus because